Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. I have to start with an admission that I haven't a bull's notion what the International Transatlantic Trade Agreement is all about. But as somebody who runs one of the largest businesses in this country, I instinctively know that what we need is more free trade between Ireland and the US. In fact, the more free trade we have between Ireland and the US, the better. The more we can inculcate the inefficient corpse of Europe with some of the more advanced thinking that exists in the US, the better it will be for the European economy and for the Irish economy as well. So I'm all in favour of free trade, particularly transatlantic free trade, which is about the only way we have of encouraging some of our European brethren to actually adopt free trade. Free trade is not something that is fostered in Europe. It's not something that's particularly encouraged in Europe. And I think the ambassador in particular has my sympathies for having to live and work in Brussels, which wouldn't exactly be one of the great centre points of world free trade thinking or ideas. From an Irish perspective, I think it's important also, now that the politicians have taken up most of the speaking time and I've been told to speak quickly and then shut up, it's not a one-way street. I think too often in Ireland we intend to think of, America, it's all inward investment. Rich Americans coming over here, and obviously they're very welcome. We'd like them to spend as much money as they can. But there isn't enough focus sometimes on the amount of investment that goes on by Irish companies in the US. And in particular, in Ryanair's case, I want to celebrate our recent agreement with Boeing, under which we're going to order another 175 aircraft over the next 5 years, which will be an investment or a value of about 15 billion investment by Ireland in US jobs and in the US economy. I'm pleased to say actually that there was very little governmental interference in this order. In fact, there was none. It wasn't dependent on support from the IDA or the Gathering or any other of those less than useful Irish government quangos. It also mercifully didn't have to get approval in Brussels, which is why it got done in about 2 weeks, and will actually make some contribution to the development of not just the Irish economy, but also the European economy. If it had to go to Brussels, they'd have spent 10 years investigating it, then another 10 years questioning it, and about 10 years lobbying against it before they eventually blocked the order. I've got to run through this very quickly because we want to open up questions. This slide, don't worry about it, just says Ryanair is wonderful. We're the Europe's best low-cost carrier. We cover all of Europe a bit like a social disease, although as you can see, there's a couple of gaps there in some of Europe's more progressive free trade areas like France, Greece, but we live in hope that eventually even the French will be dragged kicking and screaming into actually free trade and stop breaking down protectionism. One of the great joys, I should say, by the way, that the low fares airline industry is very much an Irish invention. It was created by a guy called Herb Kelleher who ran Southwest in the States, which is interesting because his grandmother came from a village called Kanturk in Cork, which I'm happy to say is where my parents also came from, but had to emigrate to Mullingar in the quest. They were trying to get to America, but as usual with the O'Learys, they got lost and landed in a town somewhere close to America called Mullingar. As you can see, most of Europe's airlines are a complete bloody shambles because they are protected by failed European governments who want to protect, and the producer, in most cases being trade unions and their employees in European airlines, at the expense of the consumer. You'll be happy to know that actually that process continues to fail miserably, which is why Ryanair is growing so wonderfully and so quickly. We've ordered 175 aircraft. We have to come up with about $15 billion over the next 5 years to pay for them, so I'll be passing the hat around after this speech, and all contributions will be very gratefully welcomed. Please write your name on the donations, because then otherwise somebody in Europe will accuse me of receiving illegal subsidies at a conference in Dublin, and will want to spend another 10 years investigating how we funded an aircraft order for 175 aircraft. Why? Because we want to continue to grow. Ryanair is one of the few Irish success stories, Irish indigenous success stories. As far as I can tell, we're one of the very few multinational companies that have emerged out of this badly run and mismanaged economy in the last 20 years, and we intend to continue to emerge and grow and continue to develop. That will grow our traffic from 80 million passengers a year to about over 100 million passengers a year in the next 5 years, which means more competition, more low fares and more choice for Irish ministers, who will shortly be able to fly to Strasbourg for about 50 quid a ticket and avoid the 8-hour KLM flight delays. This is how the fleet will grow. This is how our orders compare with everybody else in Europe. Why did we buy Boeing 737 NGs? Because Boeing build great aircraft. If it's made in the States and if they can undercut the European manufacturers, which generally isn't a very high bar in which to beat, then we'll be there buying American, creating American jobs and continuing as a small Irish company to invest in America and continue to bring the best of America to Europe, which will be deregulation, competition, taking on European failed flag carriers supported by their failed governments and their failed ideas on protectionism to the benefit of Europe's consumers. There we go. Thank you very much for listening to me.